London, Ontario, Canada. Welcome. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man. I'm Kevin Bulmer. We are celebrating and sharing the significance of our true selves and stories as we look to encourage and support each other as we each stand out, connect, and grow in the manner that we desire and deserve, both at home and in business. Today, we're going to be joined by Charlene Doak-Gebauer. This story and the mission behind it, or that's come from it, or that is evolving around it, is really going to open your eyes and certainly going to open your heart and mind. And an important conversation coming up with Charlene in just a couple of moments. Internet Sense First is the name of her organization. She also has, at the time of this recording, a summit coming up that we're going to tell you all about and why it's so important and why we encourage you to be involved. You'll see and hear Charlene in just a couple of moments. There are some really wonderful people that have made it possible to present this podcast and to introduce you to people like Charlene and to share what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what we can learn from them and how we can support them, and then how we can grow as a result of that. And I always like to take a moment and acknowledge them and encourage you to connect with these people as well. And speaking of connecting, that's as great a place to start as any. My friend Gord Fancher, his company is called Connect One Consulting. The power of connections, networking, building relationships. If you're looking to expand your professional network or be more active in your community like Charlene is, just build relationships. Gord can and will help you with that. And you can connect with him at connectoneconsulting.com, and I highly encourage you to do that. I just saw Carol Trickett from Trickett Financial yesterday from the time that we're recording this video. Carol and I sat in her office and recorded some videos where I got the chance to chat with her about some of the things that she's doing and why she's doing it and what got her into the financial industry and why she is so interested and passionate in helping first-time Canadians. Some great stories there that you'll see on my Facebook page coming up before long at facebook.com/NoScheduleMan. But in the meantime, I encourage you to reach out to Carol at trickettfinancial.com and find out how she can help you and others in your community. I also dropped by Diamond and Gold Treasures out in a little town called Lambeth, which is just to the south of London, Ontario, Canada, where I live and from where we're broadcasting. And Laura is just a terrific person who is just a little over 3 years into building this business and going out on her own and challenging herself to figure out things that she was maybe a little bit intimidated at trying to tackle and face when she first set out, but she's overcoming those. She's moving past her current comfort zone and really doing a wonderful job building her business. Diamonds and Gold Treasures, some of the finest jewelry in our area, also offering jewelry repair, custom design, and layaway. And as I like to say, have a look at what Laura is doing on her social media feed, because she's doing just a terrific job setting a great example of the power of just sharing genuinely and being yourself. In fact, there's a video on my Facebook feed. Now, if you're seeing this in, say, 2023, you're going to have to scroll way back to see it. Who knows what Facebook will be doing at that time. But if you're seeing this close to the original broadcast date or you're with us live, there's a live video recording that Laura and I did together just yesterday, where she talks a little bit about the challenge that she has overcome of jumping on video and creating relationships that way. Susan and Luke is also doing that on behalf of her passion and her business, Travel Agents in Action. Susan is a fully T-Code certified travel agent. She's a destination weddings and romantic travel specialist. She specializes in all kinds of different travel. And one of the things that really sets Susan apart is that she's a certified special needs and autism travel professional as well. So if you are somebody that you know has that as part of the reality, autism or any kind of special needs, you'll know that when it comes to travel, there are some things that need to be taken into account to make things go as smoothly and as enjoyably as possible. Susan is the person that I most recommend for that, and just to help you with your travel for business or for pleasure in general. Look up Susan at foreverpreciousmemories.ca. A couple of episodes ago, I introduced you to Brett Lucier from Provincial Glass and Mirror. Brett told the story of joining up with Provincial Glass and Mirror at an entry level or he started as an installer and earned the nickname 50/50, according to him, because he said that he broke half as much as he installed the way that it was supposed to go. Over the course of 18 years, he worked his way up through this company, which he now owns. And you can connect with Brett and learn more about them at provincialglass.com, another supporter of Journeys with the No Schedule Man. And I also encourage you to look at episode 87, or listen to that if you're on iTunes or Google Play Music or Stitcher, iHeartRadio. And Brett tells a great story that I think we could all learn from, about resourcefulness and hard work and just figuring out each challenge and meeting them as they come and not getting too far ahead of ourselves and what can come from that. That's one of the reasons why I so love doing this podcast, is to learn. I learn from every single one of these conversations that I have. I guess you could say that it's my podcast, but it's not about me, which makes it infinitely more interesting than it would be otherwise. Another thing that I feel similarly about is the event series that I produce and host. It's called Mo Mondays London. I like to describe it as like TEDx meets the Tonight Show. So there's typically myself and 4 other speakers or storytellers or contributors. We each tell a tale of about 10 to 12 minutes or so. We have a question and answer period where we can find out what the audience wants to hear about afterwards. We try to create an environment that's uplifting, that's real, but uplifting. We don't get together to cry on each other's shoulders. We're sharing experiences, stories, circumstances, what we've learned, how we've grown, in an effort to pass that along to encourage and inspire and empower other people. And every single time we do one of these events, again, I host it, I produce it, but I learn so much from the people that I get to connect with at Mo Mondays London. I would encourage you, if you're in this area, to have a look at momondays.com/London. I'm very proud of it. I would encourage you to come and see me. Give me about 60 seconds from 7 o'clock, and I will have you feeling good and looking at things in a way that you may not have looked at previously. I feel pretty confident in saying that. So thank you to all of the supporters of Journeys with the No Schedule Man, so that we could make it possible to be presenting people like Charlene Doak-Gebauer, who joins us now. Charlene, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to connect with somebody like you. And in fact, I was just talking about Mo Mondays London. You were at the event last week, were you not?
Oh, yes, I was.
How did you like it?
I loved it. It's real life stories told in a very relaxed atmosphere, very inspirational. And I want to thank you for having me on your show, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And thank you again for the time. And I look forward to when the time is right to have you on stage at Mo Mondays. I think it might be fair to say that's where our conversation started. As you were kind enough to give me more of the background on the story that we're about to go over and share, it became immediately apparent to me that I think to start, we need a lot more than the few minutes that a forum like Mo Mondays allows. So I'm really grateful that we get the opportunity to do this now. I'm going to jump us kind of into the middle and maybe closer to the current state of affairs here. What I'm really curious about is that the story and the mission behind it that we're about to share, Charlene, as you know, of course, has been born from what I'll call a very difficult reality and set of circumstances. I'm curious, how do you manage to keep readdressing it without having that continue to drag you down and negatively affect your day-to-day experience? In other words, how do you keep coming back to it and still maintain your really positive, gentle, loving way of being and outward demeanor? What's that like?
Well, I think you're probably talking about my relative that passed away, and or are we talking about the charity in general?
Well, I'm jumping before we're going to go and tell the story, but
okay.
What I'm suggesting is you're continually having to address multiple things that have very much negatively affected people in your family and other families. And I'm curious about, how do you continue to come back to that and to share it and to face that reality, which we'll talk about here in the next few minutes, without it dragging you down in your present moment?
I have to say that most people see me as being very determined. And I am a computer specialist in education and a network administrator, which means that I have a large logic base in my brain so that I view things logically quite often. I do break down emotionally sometimes because the subject is very emotional. Anyone who has a strong compassion for children and their family the way I do, yeah, it will cause some emotional stress. But because I'm logic based and I like to see things done and I'm very determined, that's what keeps me going.
The reason why I started there, Charlene, is I'd like to share that I've been in your company. I've enjoyed that a few different times. And I feel like I'm getting better, especially as I go along at sensing people's energy and intentions. I'm not always right, but I usually can tell pretty quickly when I'm around somebody that I feel a connection with and feel comfortable around and feel like here is somebody who has a really good heart and whose intentions are good. And I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I felt like from the moment that I met you, you have a very good energy coming off of you.
Well, thank you.
So I think it's important to start there to let people know that they have a choice. It's not always going to be an easy choice, but there does remain a choice in terms of how we want to show up in our experience, even when we've had unspeakably difficult things happen to us and to those that we love. And I think that you're a really great example of that. I'm sure that you must hear that from people as you go and speak around the world. What are some of the things that they say to you?
I usually get that type of comment that I'm positive, but the word that's used every time is determined, that I'm very determined. And I will say that I am. My determination is governed by my compassion and love for children and family.
And I would say that determination is a very positive trait. I suppose it could be taken the other way.
Yeah,
But in your case, I think it has a really wonderful and loving energy attached to it. And I felt inclined to start there. Now, in fairness, I think we better tell people what we're talking about. And I think probably, Charlene, the most logical way to do this is for me to ask you to just kind of go back to the beginning and share as much of the story as you feel is necessary or are willing to about what's happened that's led us to this mission of Internet Sense First. What's the story?
It's heart-wrenching. I have an identical twin, and when her daughter was 4 years old, things were happening that caused some concern. No one really understood why her behavior changed all of a sudden. And then one day, my sister called me and said the neighbors across the street have been using her for child pornography. And they were doing still pictures and videos. And it went on for maybe 4 months until people started realizing what was going on. And she ended up being the way a lot of students I taught that had been sexually abused by getting involved in the wrong crowd, into drugs and things like that. And then eventually had a boyfriend that had her do things that shouldn't have happened. And it was heart-wrenching for the whole family, right from the grandparents down to the siblings and cousins. And then at the age of 22, I got the call, July 15th, 2012, that she'd been killed by a drunk driver. And you just can't imagine. She had started going to school. She'd graduated from college. She was getting on the right track. And then all of a sudden killed by a drunk driver. And then myself, as a network administrator and computer specialist, I was re-imaging a machine and came across child pornography. And it was of children aged 4 to 10. And I tell people when I'm speaking, I'm 5'6". I'm talking about children that are 4 years old. You look at the height of that child, very vulnerable. And I knew that with my twin sister, I just didn't see the light in her eye anymore. And this is usually when I get emotional, and forgive me, but I sat down at the computer one day and thought, what can I do to help her and my family? So I started researching the crime and started realizing my expertise in computers. Perhaps I can do something to change this negative into a positive. And I thought, well, maybe I'll start a charity in memory of my niece. And I started, and I launched the papers the day after the drunk driver was convicted that killed her. And every time something new comes up, I tell my sister about it first. And she's always supportive and very pleased. But that's how it all started. And I think that's what gives me my determination. In fact, I know it is. Just to keep going and to be able to give her more news that's positive. Because it's been such a negative. They lost their little girl when she was 4. And people look at me and they'll say, oh, well, they didn't know that was happening. And I tell everyone, people that are grooming victims, and I mean grooming, getting them into their positive trust, they groom the whole family. So no one should ever point their finger at parents when this happens, because the grooming goes from the parents to the child. And eventually the child is grooming the parents because of the training of the predator. So
you're mentioning grooming. I think you're coming back around to what I was going to ask next, Charlene. There's so much in what you just shared that that I think needs to be explored further. And I'll use my own ignorance as a barometer on behalf of anybody that's watching or listening. The first thing, I wonder if grooming is part of the answer to where you had said that that your niece was being used for child pornography. I think you said by a neighbor at first.
yes,
Did I hear that correctly?
that's right.
The first question that came into my mind was, and I know it's going to be unpleasant to hear, but what being used means. And I'm wondering how maybe grooming comes into that, and what's the reality of, that you've learned about the process, how the communication starts, how the manipulation starts, and to give people an idea of the reality of what was actually going on.
Well, one of the first things when people are grooming is they find something in common with the child.
Okay.
And what was in common in this case was that they had a 4-year-old daughter themselves, and they were using their own children for the same purpose. And then they start talking to the child about, for example, she went home one day and said to my sister that Nikki's mom says I'm beautiful and I should be in movies. And who would think that would be a red flag? Nobody would. And my sister thought, well, that's good. I think you're beautiful too. And in my recent book, I talk about the whole situation and how it evolved. And then they groom the parents and saying, could she come over and watch a movie with us? And then things started happening, and she was saying things that were not indicative of her age group. And they started getting very alarmed. And then there was another girl in the neighborhood, if you can believe how people can be so bold, had another girl in the neighborhood involved in it as well. And the grooming is just building up a trust, finding things in common, and then start telling the child that their parents aren't as good as they are in this case, or that their parents aren't good parents. And in this case, they said, I don't work, your mother works, therefore your mother's not a good mother, things like that, turning the child against the parents. The behavior changes for the child. They can either become very withdrawn, or they can become a behavioral problem. So that's how the grooming gets going. And it doesn't take long for a little 4-year-old innocent to be turned around.
That just sends shivers down my spine listening to that. And then they transition from this to pornographic photos, videos, I think you said. After that, I hate to use the word trust, but trust is earned, and are somehow able to manage to manipulate these young people into keeping quiet about it, or thinking that this is, at least originally, not wrong or unnatural?
Well, they threatened to kill her parents.
Oh,
They showed
geez.
her a gun. They had a shotgun. And they said, if your father goes in the sky in a plane, we'll shoot the plane down. And had her terrified, but had her turned around to be loyal to them. And this is done online all the time. People are not getting how vulnerable our children are, particularly in online gaming. There are predators everywhere, and people will send me information that police have said, watch this app, watch that app. And I have spoken to police and they agree with me. And I say, I do not point out any app or game to a parent because predators are on all of them. It's not just one or another. And there are some games where children are on them, for example, Minecraft, because the parents don't want them on violent games. And I respect parents for doing that. But predators know that the more protected child and more naive child is on Minecraft. And they start getting involved with children on online gaming. So it's everywhere. But in my niece's case, they had child pornography. They did digitize it, but they were sharing it the old-fashioned way through movies and the regular mail. Now these people are finding each other online and their prey online. And the predators just have a feeling of family. They think this is normal because so many of us are doing it.
There are some things I just can't even imagine.
I know. And when I first started researching this, my mouth just dropped. I couldn't, I said, this is, the proliferation of this crime is like that has never happened in the history of the world because of the internet. And all of our children are fair game. And I'll tell you, it's not just unknowns. A lot of it are children in the playgrounds, the older children with the younger ones. At the summit we're having, we have a specialist in child-on-child sexual assault coming from Kansas City. And she said half the predators that they have in their trauma unit are between the ages of 11 and 15 because these children are seeing porn and they're reenacting the porn that they see. And I'll give you an example. I get calls from around the world. And I had a grandmother call me just terribly distraught because her 4-year-old granddaughter, and she's told me to tell this story, 4-year-old granddaughter was playing with a 10-year-old, and the two mothers had been friends from birth. All of a sudden, the mothers heard a scream coming from the bedroom, and they went upstairs, and the 10-year-old had pinned down the 4-year-old, had taken her underwear off, and was raping her with lollipop sticks. And that was vaginally and anally, and it's because this girl has seen this online. This is happening over and over again. And parents don't realize over 80% of children are viewing pornography and their parents don't have a clue. This is becoming an epidemic in society. And the experts we have coming to our summit are going to give the reality, and we are going to give the method on how to supervise our children because it's not being done.
So here we come to why I started where we did, about the positive difference that you're making, the kind of person that I perceive you to be. And I know I'm not alone, Charlene. There are a lot of Charlene Doak-Gebauer fans out there.
Oh, thank you.
Because I can even just feel myself becoming rigid and angry. I think I, like you, have long ago chosen to believe that the world is a good place. And I believe that it is. And I believe that most people are good and have good intentions. That doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes, even those of us that I think are good. But the kind of, I'm trying, but I can't get inside the mind, the thought process of the kind of person that would engage in that kind of activity and in any way be able to justify to themselves that was okay, let alone a good thing to be doing. And so again, back to where we started, to acknowledge that we can still choose to be positive, but if we don't at least face the reality of what's going on, if we choose naivety, like I have in abundance, I'm admitting, we're very vulnerable, and the people that we love are very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And the thread is like, for instance, am I getting this anywhere close to right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Like, so when you were talking about Minecraft and whatnot, I think about the amount of time that one of my sons plays Fortnite. He's sort of gone through the Minecraft thing and then onto the Fortnite. And so I'll ask on behalf of people watching and listening that I know their daughters and sons are probably doing something similar. How does, as best as maybe you can describe, how does this kind of manipulation and grooming start to show itself in an environment like that?
On online gaming, they love online games. Parents, once a child is playing an online game, they're on a separate server. They're on the gaming server. So that my theory of digital supervision is very important when people want to supervise and look after their children. Gamers, predators will start just by chatting. They'll ask simple questions like, where's the computer in your house? Is it in the living room? Are your parents close by? Can they hear you? And then they'll start realizing, well, I might have a target. And these predators are so sophisticated, they can find their targets online faster than they could in a playground, just by asking simple questions. And then they'll start showing them maybe pictures of themselves. And then they'll start asking them, can you send me a nude? And that's what the kids call pictures of themselves nude. They're nudes. And then they will start showing them pornography. And then they know the child can get hooked because there are children as young as 6 addicted to pornography and their parents don't have a clue. The neuroplasticity of the brain is affected at any age. Pornography is designed so that people will be addicted. And there are over about 13,000 porn movies made every year and about 500 Hollywood movies. So you know where the money is. So they will start showing them pornography, asking them to send nudes, and then they might start doing sextortion. Or you look at Amanda Todd, how she sent a nude to a fellow in Europe, and then he started sextortion, and she committed suicide. And people will ask me, why are there so many suicides in schools? And I'll say, you know, a lot of these kids are sharing nudes because that's the first question a guy will ask them in school. It's not, do you want to go out for a date? So this type of grooming isn't just on online gaming. It's happening in schools as well. And there are, I call people predators because there are parents using their children for child pornography. That is their enterprise. So the grooming in online gaming is gradual, but it does not take long to get these kids hooked.
I found myself wanting to ask, how are our questions not asked more quickly in the process, and then thereby revealing these people that are making these asks? First of all, online, I think anonymity is probably frighteningly easy, wouldn't it be?
Yes.
And then the other thing I think I'm hearing from you is that some of this behavior in these asks, it sounds like it's frighteningly normal or accepted now. Is that sounds ridiculous coming out of my mouth, but I just we weren't asking each other for nudes when I was in the play, nor did anybody ever ask me for one.
No. It is.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm trying to get my head around, again, on behalf of other people, how if somebody comes up to my son or my sweetheart's daughter and asks her for something like that, how she doesn't immediately sound the alarm. But it sounds like there are so many that, for a variety of reasons, aren't, or are being threatened not to, or that it's just becoming so ingrained in certain circles that it It doesn't occur to them that there's actually something really nefarious going on?
Well, I have interviewed a lot of principals. I've spoken in schools. It's an epidemic. Boys, girls, they exchange nudes all the time. And the biggest reason is because their parents never look at their cell phones. And part of my theory of digital supervision is you need to look. You own the phone. And if your child is under the age of 18 and they have nudes on your cell phone, you are in possession of child pornography, which is a criminal offense. These kids will send nudes. It's a joke. I've spoken in schools, grades 5 to 12. The minute I ask them, anyone have any inappropriate pictures, they all burst out laughing. But when I'm done, they're very sober, because I'll tell them you are committing a criminal offense by even having a picture. And I give this example every time I speak. Let's say, for example, you have a behavioral child that's 8 years old. They take a picture of their genitalia and send it to their friend down the street by email or a messenger. And the friend's father happens to get this picture. He calls the police. The police come to your door. They question you separately from your child, your son. They ask you, where did you get that picture on that cell phone that you're paying for and have the contract for? And you say, I don't know how that got there. They go to your behavioral child, and behavioral children love to lie. They don't like being in trouble, even though they are. And they say, my daddy took that picture. That becomes a whole new conversation with the police. And that can happen to grandparents, aunts and uncles. Who's looking after them? Religious leaders, doctors. What are these children doing in your offices without their parents while they're waiting for an appointment? These are all things that people need to know about and see the reality of. It's in epidemic proportions. And I can't stress that enough. There are boys so addicted to porn that they have erectile dysfunction, and girls are calling it sex before kissing, because the boys have to do self-arousal before they can even perform because of their addiction to porn.
Well, I'm trying to process what you just said. What I wrote down is what your kids might think is funny may well be a criminal offense. Mm-hmm. I think that what I heard from you is that, even, again, I'm saying this in layman's terms and just I'm not, bringing my naivety and ignorance to this conversation. I hope it helps with some other people and what they're thinking, that even if you've got a child that isn't addicted to porn or something like that, that is just, they think that something's funny and there's no harm in it, that actually has the legitimate power to bring a family to its knees.
That's right. And every school I speak in, and I have spoken from London to Toronto to Windsor, every school, without a lie, the principal says, we've had children charged in our school. And they whisper it. They'll say, we've had children. And I'll look at them and I'll say, you don't need to feel lonely about it. This is happening worldwide. When I spoke in Iceland, you need to come back. We need to hear more about your theory of digital supervision. In Europe, India, they said, this is happening everywhere. You have to come back. And I said, I can come back. You have to pay my way, but I'll come back. It's a global problem. It is not going away. And my theory of digital supervision comes in 3 parts. Awareness, which is what we're talking about now. Method, how do you supervise your children? And hope, we can do this. As parents, we must do this. Because these children are being brought up by the internet. Yes, people tell me, isn't there anything positive about the internet? Of course there is. But as parents, we need to digitize our parenting. Too much ownership is being given to children to make the right choices online. Parents need to take the ownership, as we have for years, of supervising our children. I can't stress that enough. So that digital supervision takes so much ownership off the child. Kevin, what child at the age of 8 makes an executive decision on what to have for dinner? How are they going to make a decision on who to chat with?
Yeah, forgive me for stumbling around, Charlene. You've blown my mind open on so many fronts that I'm trying to process it all, and then think of another question to ask you besides. But I know that I've often heard myself say to other people in conversation, including to my own kids, that I don't know how they deal with what they deal with today.
Mm-hmm.
I had it easy. I remember talking to my late grandmother, and she lamented, Charlene, about the time arriving when she felt like she could no longer say hello. She was a school teacher
Mm-hmm.
all her life, and very personable and sociable, and loved and appreciated young people. But even in her lifetime, she's been gone a long time now, she got to the point where she was afraid just simply to even address a child or young person, just to say hello, for thinking that it might be perceived that she was up to something negative. To go from that to what we're talking about here, wow. It's the horses are way, way, way out of the barn, aren't they?
Yes, they are. We need to catch up because this generation is being exposed to more pornography, violence, hate, cyberbullying, suicide, even becoming radicalized than any generation in the history of the world. These children, a lot of them experience a lot of anxiety after seeing pornography because they're not going to tell their parents for a lot of different reasons. But the biggest one is that children are taught not to run around naked. And then all of a sudden they see adults doing things naked that they just are totally stressed out over. So that how do you combat that without communicating with your children? A lot of people are giving these devices, and please, I am not pointing my finger at parents saying you're doing a bad job. I'm saying I've got the goods. I've researched, and I've developed a theory of digital supervision that everyone can use. It's in user-friendly terms to supervise our children online. That's what we need to start doing. We're all doing an excellent job with traditional parenting. But the digital age started live streaming and animated GIFs in around 2001. That's just 18 years ago.
Yeah.
In the history of the world, that's a lot of time to catch up on, but we need to do it.
Well, I'll go first. I've got two sons. They both have their own digital devices, which they're on lots, and I've never once even held either of those things, I don't think, let alone scrolled through the photo archive or the internet search history or something like that. And I admit that I keep using the word naive. I'm not trying to be too self-critical, but I think we're back to the reason why we're having this conversation in the first place, isn't it?
Yes.
Just be aware, understand this is real. This is happening. Doesn't mean that your kids aren't intelligent and emotionally and intellectually, or that you're a bad parent.
That's right.
But it means that this is happening. This is real. This is what's going on. And we need to, the first step in the digital supervision is awareness. Hence our discussion. So maybe from there we could transition a little bit. You've mentioned the summit a couple of times, so maybe I can open up the discussion as we get into the second half of it, of turning to, and I'm sure that we could probably talk for hours, Charlene, on more and more of the details of the reality of what's going on right now, and how our young people in particular are at risk. I'm going to act on behalf of the audience. So that I'm so shaken up already by what you've shared with me that I'm going to make a leap of faith and think that's enough to have made the point for now. Now, I wonder if we can transition to, okay, what do we do about it? Let's get to the summit in a bit. First of all, you mentioned in passing about starting a charity. Mm-hmm. That wasn't a simple thing, was it? And now we're back again to where I started of has something that has the power to basically destroy a family emotionally. And you were put on that mat and not only chose to get back up, but to do something to try to help your sister and other people in the process. And even there, with the best of intentions, you were met with obstacles in trying to do something good. So what was it like, even just trying to get the nonprofit, I say even just, but trying to get a nonprofit formed and up and running? What was that journey?
Well, yes, it was very challenging, and I didn't quite know where to start. I met with a lawyer who told me I had to develop objectives for the charity, and that it would cost anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000 in legal fees to get it going. And Doak happens to be a Scottish name, and being of Scottish descent, I decided I'm going to research this and see what I can do on my own. So I researched and I developed my objectives, sent it to a company in Toronto that helped me register as a not-for-profit. 5 months later, I spoke to the Charities Directorate and developed my objectives. And within 5 months, we became a registered charity. The gal that was helping me had children. And she said, it's time someone did something like this. So developing the charity, I did without a lawyer. And I have developed a brand. Shoot, the words aren't coming to me, but we have registered Common Internet Sense as with copyright, and copyright can be worldwide. And then we have a trademark, Internet Sense for Internet Safety, which is good in Canada, and that's what we call our educational sessions. Educational sessions are based on my theory of digital supervision. So that's how I got the charity started, and I've never used a lawyer. I've researched and done it on my own and had a lot of people in the government helping me out.
Again, back to my naivete, it sounds like something to me that I would assume, well, there's got to be an organization with their eyes on that.
Well,
and then, but there, and maybe there are several, but can you describe for me the genesis of you even deciding that the charity, putting that organization together, was a necessary step? Why was that important?
I researched. I went to Pillar Downtown, the not-for-profit organization that coordinates charities. They said there really isn't anyone else doing this. There are online places that have information, but they do not go out and talk to people. And I know from being a teacher that unless you're eyeball to eyeball, people are not looking you up. And the online ones, they're doing great work. I can't complain. I'm not complaining, but people don't know about it. That's not what they're searching for online. And my theory of digital supervision is all enclosed in one book that people can order. My second book is called The Internet, Are Children in Charge? The answer to that question is yes, they are. But that will be available at our summit on November 9th. And the publishing company is distributing it to 40,000 distribution channels worldwide, including chapters in Amazon and Kindle.
Okay, so you answered a question that I was going to ask. You said that that's your second book?
Yes.
Does the first relate to the topic that we're talking about?
Yes. It's called Digital Sexual Victims, True Cases. It is online as well, 35,000 distribution channels at that one, and at Chapters, and Kindle, and Amazon. But it has everything in it, but this one is more comprehensive. I've put a lot more in it. I have interviewed a child pornography victim and his wife. They're very much on board with this. Phil Squire, the city councillor, who is a criminal lawyer, I interviewed him because he has defended predators. That's a very interesting interview. And a police officer, a psychotherapist, and a life coach that have all helped or investigated child pornography victims. And the interviews are all in my book.
And so at the time of this discussion in late September of 2019, The Internet, Our Children in Charge is about to be released. It sounds like in concert with the summit.
Yes, I'm hoping to have that book launch. They've accelerated my publication, and I just sent my second draft yesterday to the publisher. The cover is finalized. Once that second draft is done, then I can get some printed copies in hard copy or hardcover or soft cover for the summit.
The great thing about a podcast platform, something like this, is that once we've created this conversation, it will be available. We'll put something, what I think is positive, out there into the internet.
Yes.
And for all we know, somebody may be listening to this in 2025 and then can go right to, who knows, maybe Amazon's been taken down by now. I don't know, but I'll assume they're still up and selling books and that people can find that. But back into the present day context of the conversation, we've referred to the summit a few different times. What is it, and why do you feel like it's so important for you to do now?
It's called International Summit to End Internet Child Exploitation. And we have the answers that the governments have not been able to give. And that is how to supervise children. The summit is based on the outline of awareness, method, and hope. My theory of digital supervision, I will be presenting in summary because we don't have, the length of a book to give. But Nerds on Site and Atom Networks have partnered with the charity because they believe, and I believe, digital supervision with their new artificial intelligence filter need to be considered interdependent. So we will be presenting methods of supervision in user-friendly fashion for everyone to understand.
And you're doing this here in London, Ontario. It's an international summit that you're hosting here at home.
Yes, we are. We have speakers coming from the United States and Canada. One is coming from Kansas City to talk about child-on-child sexual assaults, which is becoming an epidemic. And they see that. They've researched. Another lady is coming from Scottsdale, Holly Dowling. She is a motivational speaker. She's going to help with the hope end of the digital supervision format. The other lady was the assistant district attorney in Philadelphia, and she has defended children that have been doing self-exploitive pictures or producing and distributing child pornography. She's going to be giving information about the liabilities of parents and professionals from a global perspective. And it's global, I've researched, it's the same in just about every first world country. We have the OPP, Child Sexual Exploitation Unit, coming to show their methods of apprehending people. The lady that specializes in pornography for children, prepare or repair the damage. Another lady talking about online gaming, a double doctorate lady from OISE at the University of Toronto, and a sex trafficking specialist from IJM. The people coming are unbelievable speakers. It's only $50. People in Toronto said you should be charging $1,000 for the caliber of these people that are coming. And I mean that. They are global speakers. I've met them when I've been speaking. I've asked, would you? And before I could finish this sentence, it will be our pleasure. So I hope London gets out there and makes a statement because we want to end child exploitation online.
Is there an ability for people outside London to access this maybe by a live stream or something of that nature?
If we do this another time, we'll probably do that. But at this point, it's basically in person. We do have a company that is volunteering to tape some portions of it. But as far as accessibility is concerned, we can't guarantee that afterwards.
Yeah, it's the first of its kind, is it not?
It is the first and only of its kind in the world.
Yeah, so you've got to, you've always got to do the first one.
That's right.
And one of the things that I'm really proud about with these kinds of discussions is you don't have to go very far to find people who are doing extraordinary things. And so here we are in the same city in little old Ontario, Canada, where you're bringing people together to really try to make a positive difference of something that's, if I'm hearing you correctly, a global epidemic.
Everywhere. We've had questions from even Africa about this summit. And how do I get on? What do I do? Teachers in Africa. And they say, you need to come to Africa to speak. New Zealand, Australia. I get information, I get requests from everywhere, and I don't go to all of them. But this summit has international recognition. In fact, people internationally are already buying tickets. So we need to get Londoners out there.
Where can people find tickets and more information?
InternetSenseFirst.com. Go to our website. You can go on Eventbrite to purchase tickets. International Summit to End Internet Child Exploitation.
What are you hoping to... I don't know if this is a fair question or not, Charlene, but what are you hoping to get out of doing this first event?
Our goal, my goal as an author, our goal as a charity is to save more children.
Yeah.
And people say, is this a fundraiser? Not at $50. We want to get parents out there. We've made it affordable. Our concern is the safety of children. And the more people that get out there, the more that know about digital supervision. My goal is to have digital supervision a household term. Are you doing digital supervision? Because we're recommending, too, that parents, you have children that are playing in other people's homes. Call the other parents. Ask them if they want to go in on a table with you so that you will all learn digital supervision so that there's consistency between homes. That's huge. And with digital supervision, if you are communicating with your children enough, it won't matter whose home they're in. They will know enough to come home if things are happening that they know and have been taught should not be engaged in. So that digital supervision is so important.
There's going to be such a powerful mix of people and experience in the room that day. And I'm imagining that there are going to be some great learnings that come out of that just by being together and the alchemy of the whole experience. As I'm listening to you, Charlene, it sounds to me almost just as much like a beginning as an end to anything. Sometimes you have an event, you're offering a ticket. We're hoping to have the event and have a good event, but I feel myself interpreting this as something that could really be a launch pad for starting new discussions. Am I off base?
You're absolutely right. Because if we don't start here with awareness, method, and hope, there is no discussion.
Yeah.
A lot of people are in such denial. I've talked to politicians, radio personalities, people that you would think would be aware. They look at me and they'll say, well, isn't this a third world country problem? Like, we don't have that problem here. And it's everywhere. The proliferation of this crime is so bad that pedophiles are even asking to be part of the LGBTQ community. They want acceptance as a sexual orientation. And I find Canadians were trained to accept everything, but it's time. It's time the majority became the majority again.
Sorry, can you back that one up for a second? Mm-hmm. What I thought I heard you saying was that pedophiles wanted into that community, and I immediately started interpreting that as they want in it so that they can start grooming and manipulating within it. But then, after listening to you finish the sentence, I had a different interpretation of it that sounded a lot more terrifying to me.
Well, they want full acceptance, like the LGBTQ.
That it's okay to go and rape and exploit children.
That's right. They think it's okay, and they want everybody accepting them. In fact, they have 2 or 3 different logos for that, and they even have their own flag. But it's totally disgusting to me. And I tell everyone that so much in today's society, the majority has become the minority in life. I don't know if you've noticed that, but this is where the majority has to speak out and say, enough is enough. We are not accepting pedophilia as a sexual orientation under any circumstances. We have a consultant on our board from the LGBTQ community because a lot of the LGBTQ people have children. And we want people to know that pedophiles are not within the LGBTQ community any more than they are in the heterosexual community or any other community. In fact, there are heterosexuals doing child pornography that are not pedophiles. They're just doing it for the money. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are parents using their children for the industry. And case in point with my niece. Case in point with a lot of things going on out there. This crime is not going away unless we come out, go to the summit, make a statement. We're not putting up with it.
I don't even know what to say to that last one.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine.
I know.
There are some places that I'm not saying I'm any better or worse than anyone. I'm just doing my best, to try to get through life and to be nice and take care of my responsibilities and try to make a positive difference. But there are some places that I just can't go.
Yeah.
Up here and here. And that's one of them. I don't understand.
No. And a lot of people don't. It's very difficult to comprehend, but when we get emotional about it, then we have to turn it around the way I have to say, I'm not putting up with this.
Yeah.
And I don't care if people say, there is no acceptance to violating a child. Yeah. The fellow I interviewed that was a child pornography victim has permanent damage and is incontinent because the sphincter was completely damaged when he was a child. This is a violent assault on our children, emotionally and physically. And it's a violent assault when people are trying to get our children online, in gaming, in social media. It's everywhere. And then people have said, why don't you call Facebook and Twitter and all these other places and see what they can do? Ladies and gentlemen, there are over 25 million concurrent users on any platform. That's why Mark Zuckerberg is not going to meetings. They cannot do this. We must, as parents, start supervising our children and protecting them online, as we do when we're driving them to school and taking them to the door. We're giving our kids the keys to our router and the internet and letting them journey unsupervised with the worst of the worst in the world. It's got to change.
Yeah, I said earlier, and it's probably not the most gentle or intellectual analogy that I could find, but that the horses have long since left the barn. It sounds like we've got to wake up and realize that, again, the first step that you mentioned is awareness. And for a start, accept and understand what is reality and close the barn doors as a start, and then start getting real about what's going on inside the barn.
Exactly. No, that's right.
Wow. Nice little conversation for a Friday afternoon. And this is again, Charlene, why I started where we did.
Yeah.
That you are, I really admire you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
You just have a really kind and loving, albeit purposeful energy. But the purposeful energy and the determination is a breath of fresh oxygen, because I think that there are so many of us, and maybe in a way that I'm not going to finish there because it's too much of a leap. But what I was going to say is that I think so many of us are just there are a lot of people that are suffering just day to day, just trying to get by, and then I guess I will go there. It might even contribute to these kinds of things because we're not as alert and engaged in our own lives and with our own purpose as we maybe could be. And to debate that, or whether it goes into that, or whether that's either accurate or not, is probably a conversation for another day. But when I come across people like you who really know what they stand for and the difference that they're trying to make, and they're purposeful and they're passionate about it, but they're real about it. They're not saying, hey, the world is all sunshine and rainbows. There are lots of rainbows and sunshine in the world, but there are also some really dark parts and hurtful things going on that are going on whether we choose to stick our hand in the sand or not.
That's right.
And if we choose not to, then that means, okay, that means that we've got to invite some conversations that may initially feel difficult. But what's going to be more difficult? Having the conversation and confronting that darkness, or having it get through the barn doors and bring you to your knees?
That's exactly right.
Later.
Because we may find things stressful in our lives, but our children, the naive, vulnerable beings in our lives, are running into the stress and the choices they're supposed to make online, but being guided by the wrong people, and parents not knowing what is going on. I was a single parent for 14 years. I know how busy you can be, especially when you're doing everything as a single parent. I've designed digital supervision for simplicity and effectiveness because I know how busy we all are. If people come to the summit, they will find out just how simple it can be, what they need to learn. It is something everyone can learn. I'm a computer specialist, as I said before, and I've simplified all of it. In fact, Nerds on Site said people need to know about this because it is simple.
Yeah. You, maybe in closing, on a positive note, you've mentioned that you do speak all over the world on this and are opening people's eyes and hearts and minds, I think. What are some of the positive conversations and reactions that you see from people, the difference that you see when the light goes on and they want to get active in your community? What maybe comes to mind along those lines, Charlene?
Well, every time I speak, I ask people if there are any questions. When I first start, I don't know, you've spoken, you're a speaker, and you see people, they're looking around and this sort of thing, and they have the looks on their faces. And then by the end of it, they're looking right at me. Their eyes do not move for the last 10 minutes. That's when I know the light is on. And I have never had it not happen that way. And when I ask people at the end, are there any questions? They're in the same boat that you're in, totally absorbed in the information I give.
Yep.
And I think almost fearful that what am I doing wrong, or what should I be doing? And it should be, what can I do? These are the methods. What can I do? Because, as I said, we all drive our kids to school. The fumes, the gas fumes, the kids going into the school. But we give them the key to a router and let the kids, just because there's a screen, that doesn't relieve us of our responsibilities for a minor. That screen poses more responsibilities than people can imagine. As soon as a router provides a gateway to the internet in your home, you have far more responsibilities, and it's a matter of educating ourselves.
Yeah.
It's time. And that's, I guess, why I've been guided in this direction.
There's an online community that I've been nurturing over the last couple of years as we encourage each other to grow and collaborate and support each other. And there are 4 words, I call them kind of the 4 keys to contentment. And awareness is the first one. I call them awareness, acceptance, forgiveness, and focus. But I feel like everything starts with awareness. We can't do something about something that we don't know is there to have anything done about it.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I don't know how smooth that delivery was there, Charlene.
That was
good. Thank you. You're being very kind. I hope that a conversation like this will add a small part to it. I'm running through a list in my mind even of the people that I want to send a link to and just say, hey, give this a listen, give this a watch. And I know that I'll be having some different kinds of conversations with my 2 sons here over this coming weekend. InternetSenseFirst.com, the International Summit to End Child Exploitation. It's at the Hellenic Centre in London. It's November 9th. Is that correct? 2019. And again, if you come across the recording of this podcast at some point in the future, have a look for Charlene. And who knows, maybe there are other events coming up, or she may be coming into your area if you're not here in the London, Ontario area. Is InternetSenseFirst.com, please forgive my ignorance, Charlene, is that a website where people can find you, whether the event is going on or not, or is that specific to the event?
That's specific to the charity. My personal speaking Website is cdoak-gebauer.com.
I will. Forgive me while I write that down. It's not particularly captivating for people to listen to or watch while I make notes.
Well,
But I'll do that to make sure that I post that and encourage people to reach out to you. And I'm hoping and thinking that there are some people that will come across this that would like to reach out to you and have you come to them as well. And that sounds like something that you're perfectly willing to do.
Well, yes, it is, because I believe so strongly in what I'm doing. I ask for a donation to the charity. I don't get paid. My expenses and a donation to the charity so that more children can be helped through therapy.
Right. And the book that's on its way, The Internet, Are Children in Charge?
Yes.
Have a look for that as well. Okay.
And the answer to that question is yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
It's time to close the barn doors. Past time. Charlene, thank you so much for this time. We're really lucky to have you. You're a real beacon of light and hope in our community and across the world. And it's a privilege to know you. I hope this helps, and I look forward to more discussions.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Charlene Doak-Gebauer, and just to restate, her website is cdoak. That's C as in Charlene, DOAK-Gebauer. I'll spell that for you as well. GEBAUBER.com. And of course, I'll post that with the blog post that I create for all of the episodes of this podcast that will be available at noscheduleman.com. You can just go there and click on podcast, or go directly to noschedulemanpodcast.com, and you'll find it there as well. This is episode number 89 that you can search for it and find it there. And I'll make sure that all of the links that Charlene shared, both internetsensefirst.com, cdoak-gebauer.com is there, and some of the other things that we referred to as well. Again, just a reminder, that event that she mentioned, it's called the International Summit to End Child Exploitation. It's set for November the 9th of 2019. Tickets are $50. It's at a wonderful place called the Hellenic Centre here in South London, Ontario. And you can learn more at internetsensefirst.com. And again, the name of the book is The Internet, Are Children in Charge? And you can also look for her first book called Digital Sexual Victims, True Cases. We've got to learn more and do better to protect the ones that we love about this. And I really appreciate Charlene joining us. So you'll be able to find access to all of that information at noschedulemanpodcast.com. I encourage you to just visit me on the site in general at noscheduleman.com. You'll find all of the episodes of this podcast that are available to you 24/7, 365, absolutely free. And there's just so much to learn and so much experience to draw upon, not because of me, but because of people like Charlene and their heart and their mission and their purpose and their expertise and their willingness to share. I encourage you to sign up to my email list so that I can keep you up to date on future episodes of the podcast and other things that we're doing. You will also find information about my online community, which I briefly mentioned there with Charlene. It's called the Turtle Tribe. There are an endless amount, it seems like, of blogs and videos and other things like that at noscheduleman.com as well. Also want to say a quick thank you to Diamond and Gold Treasures, Trickett Financial, Mo Mondays London, Provincial Glass and Mirror, Connect One Consulting, and Susan and Luke from Travel Agents in Action for their support of this podcast. And most of all, I want to say thank you to you for investing some time to join Charlene and myself. I hope you found it valuable. And I hope that we can come together and help make a positive difference and start attacking this problem. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you. And until next time, just want to remind you, it's difficult to find our treasure by following someone else's map, but there's nothing stopping us from sharing clues with each other along the way. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.